everybody. It's Mayor Jane. Thank you again for joining us this afternoon for our daily Facebook update. So, very, very pleased to have yet another incredible guest here with us today, Dr. Alex Engelman. Welcome, Alex, and we will be getting to you in just a minute. We have some great questions for you, and this is a topic that is really relevant right now and on a lot of our citizens' minds. But first, I want to give an update. The case numbers, we have 1,105 total positive COVID-19 cases in Hillsborough County, and that includes 23 deaths. We had another individual die in the last 24 hours. And as I always say, each of those numbers represents an individual who is leaving behind their family and their loved ones. And so we are working as hard as we can, not only to reduce the number of cases of COVID-19, but to reduce the associated deaths. And we have done a great job so far, but we certainly can't take our foot off of the pedal there. In Florida, we've had 33,193 positive cases with 1,218 deaths. There was information in the paper yesterday about us having the highest one-day total of deaths in the state of Florida at 83. And I just want everyone to know that those individuals, we didn't have 83 individuals die in one 24-hour period. That was a lag in the reporting. The number is accurate, but not the number of people that had died in in one 24-hour segment. But still, incredibly significant, the number of individuals that have died from this. I was just interviewed about how well Hillsborough County has done with being able to basically crush that curve, but and asked how we were able to do that, as if the credit for that success should go to the leaders in the community, but really it's the citizens. The citizens are the ones that have taken that personal responsibility seriously and have adhered to the safer at home order, and also in adhering to those simple steps that can be taken, 6-foot distance separation, and also wearing of the facial covering and the disinfecting of areas. So my thanks to each and every one of you for doing your part to keep the number of cases down and the associated deaths. But also you need to remember that this isn't the flu season where we're gonna come right out of this and be done with it. We're basically holding it off right now. And when we start to open back up, we're going to have to take these same precautionary steps, and there are going to be additional cases. The ease with which this is transmitted and the silence of the virus on a large scale is going to cause the spread of it through the community. But it's how well we can control that as a city and as a county is what's significant. So I just want everyone to remember that, and don't think that we can all high five each other and we're all done with this. Our work has just begun. The Hillsborough County call center is open. If you tried to call, you may have met with a busy signal, and I apologize for that. We have the number of individuals that are calling in to get an appointment for a test has just overwhelmed the line. So don't worry, you will be able to get a test, but it just may take a while. So just continue to try at the call, the desk, and the number there is 813-274-6710, 274-6710. And remember, all of the parameters for the testing are gone. If you want to get a test, you can get a test. And so, please just stick with it. You'll get through, and you'll be able to go to any one of the facilities that are providing the test. And they're in the city of Tampa's Lee Davis Center off of 22nd, and then Raymond James Stadium as well. So please, please, please be patient. I know that it's frustrating when you call and you either get a busy signal or your call gets dropped, but they're just overwhelmed with the number of people that are calling, which is a good problem to have. That means that our citizens are going to go and get tested because we're successful, but that success comes with an asterisk because we have only tested just over 1% of our population. So we don't have a complete view of how widespread the virus is in our community. So I thank each and every one of you that are going to be tested. The governor is having his press conference is set for 5 o'clock today, and he is expected to talk about slowly opening our state. I personally am very happy to hear him say that he is going to base the opening of the state on the science and on the data, and that it is going to be a slow return to normalcy here in the state. Because if some states have done just flip the light switch on and everything, the expectation that everything is back to normal, and I fear that the spread in those particular areas is going to be great and may well overwhelm them. So very, very important. Got some bad news about the antibodies. Uh, my thought was that we could test individuals that may have been asymptomatic and they would have a level of, if they had had the virus and were asymptomatic, they would have a level of immunity and they could go back out into the workforce. But the information that we're receiving now indicates that the tests are not as reliable as they thought they were, and that the time frame for the immunity may be much shorter than was first anticipated. So all hope is not lost, but we're waiting on further information, and maybe Dr. Engelman can enlighten us on that. I want to remind everybody again, do not forget to fill out your census, please. It doesn't take any time at all. You should have received a paper copy at your house. You can fill that out, turn it back in, or you can go to census.gov and fill it out online. But you have to fill it out. We need an accurate picture of the individuals that live in our community, because all of our federal funding that comes to the city of Tampa and comes to Hillsborough County is based on the census. So it's incredibly important that you go and you fill that census out. Very, very important. It also determines how many congressional reps we get for our area. And as our state and our community grows dramatically, it's important that we have the appropriate amount of representation up in Washington, D.C., looking out for us. So please, please, please do that. Don't forget to go to tampagov.net for information. Anything you need to know about COVID-19 is there. So please go tampagov.net and then text Tampa Ready, Tampa Lista to 888-777 for real-time text information. So very, very important. All right, now to our distinguished guests. It's it's like people say, how should I address you? And I always say Jane, but I always feel like, I have to call you Dr. Engelman instead of Alex. And I know you'll say, just call me Alex, but that's the way you're raised. So Dr. Engelman is a radiation oncologist at the Cancer Center of South Tampa, but he is with us today in his role as a passionate transportation advocate. He's one of the founders of Take Back Bayshore and is involved with many other groups working toward increased pedestrian and bike safety. So thank you very much for joining us today. And so you're both a physician and a transportation safety advocate. So tell us what inspired you to advocate for safer mobility and how your medical background contributes to your unique perspective on transportation.
Mayor Castor, thank you for having me on. It's my honor. And please, it's Alex. So I do wear both those hats, like many people nowadays that find themselves stay-at-home workers and stay-at-home educators. Necessity is the mother of invention. Unfortunately, after Jessica and Lilia Robinal were killed on Bayshore Boulevard, I'm a Bayshore resident and I have 3 young sons, 2 of whom walk on Bayshore every weekend. And I felt that it was really one of the biggest threats to their safety and to our ability to enjoy this beautiful natural resource that in all of our parks and streets across the city. And so sort of took up the cause with thousands of other people. Actually, over 8,800 people have signed our Change.org petition to this end. And was, you're right, motivated in some regards by my background as a physician and interest in public health. Motor vehicle deaths remain one of the top 2 causes of death for all individuals ages 1 to 44. And it's number 1 for 15 to 24-year-olds. So it really is a public health emergency and a crisis not unlike what we're going through right now.
Yes, without a doubt. And you name that age bracket, and my kids are getting ready to turn 21. And it really is, I've seen in my years as a police officer, those decisions that individuals can make that, can be fatal in an instant. And it's just heartbreaking. I've had to knock on way too many doors to tell people that their loved ones weren't going to be coming back home. And so it's a concern for our entire community without a doubt. So data indicates that fewer people are driving and many more are walking and biking, which we have seen since we put the Safer at Home order in place. So with less traffic on the roads, some individuals are taking advantage of the open roads and are speeding and engaging in reckless driving. So as a transportation safety advocate, have you noticed this trend?
I think that the data bears that out.
Mhm.
You mentioned, the role of individual decisions in traffic fatalities and in traffic crashes in general, and certainly, the priority of pedestrians and courtesy on the road are individual decisions not to drive impaired or distracted. Those are critically important moment to moment. But the way we use our roadways and the design of roadways is another component that contributes to that. And you're right, with wide open roads that are made for high volume traffic, now with minimal traffic, there's no impediment to speed. We see that on a number of our roadways that are built more towards high volume traffic flow, that it's not necessarily on peak hours that they're most dangerous, but when people have the opportunity to speed. So there are less crashes across the nation as a whole, but the percentage of crashes that are fatalities is going up because of speed. So many cities across our country and across the world are adopting these slow streets or open streets policies, I think, to help curb that and help provide a place where people can get out and enjoy nature, get that mental break from social distancing and staying at home, and do so in a safe way, and environmentally friendly way. It's really interesting to see that nitric dioxide has fallen by about 25% in measured areas that have had less traffic, as most places have. And that may help actually with coronavirus, because there's a couple studies, one from Europe, one out of Harvard, that show that in areas with highest COVID-related mortality overlap with areas of highest particulate air pollution.
Wow.
So maybe that the air pollution is sort of priming the inflammatory response in the lungs, or further weakening the reserve. It's a correlative, not causative relationship, but it's certainly an interesting fact to consider, that one way that we can continue to make our city safer for people to not contract or not have morbidity from coronavirus is to continue to reduce our traffic volume.
Yeah, and that's very interesting. I remember early on, I saw a photo, an aerial heat photo of China prior to COVID-19, and it was bright orange, indicative of pollution. And then after they put a stay-at-home order in place, after a number of weeks, it was gone. And as you said, our skies are much, much cleaner right now. And as this virus attacks the lungs, there clearly has to be some type of a relationship between the two. So it is nice. And I hope that this lack of dependency on our cars might be a silver lining, that individuals will find other ways to to be able to other forms of transportation rather than the car, either walking or biking in the
I
community.
agree with you so much. We're making, so many people are making such hard changes and sacrifices right now to maintain social distancing and safer at home in the interest of public health. And in a very similar fashion, there are behavioral changes and social changes we can make in terms of our attitudes on the roads, the way we use our roads, the alternating timing and speed restrictions on our roads, so that they can be safer public health spaces for our residents and pedestrians too. It's great to see how many people are out on Bayshore and in many of our neighborhoods during this time. And as you mentioned in the intro, it's hard to know, to what extent should we explore further pedestrian activation of our roadways.
Yes, and it's a lot of the people that I've talked to, those are the comments that they have made, is that they've had more time to appreciate. We've always been in such a hurry. Again, maybe a silver lining of this virus is that we have time to slow down and appreciate nature and appreciate our neighbors, and to see individuals out walking. And in some cases, there are sociological studies that show that the disappearance of the front porch had in the garage, where individuals would just pull into their garage and park, just had such a detrimental effect on the sense of neighborhood and sense of community, that people can't even name who their neighbors are anymore. So, maybe that's something that we can get back to as a result of this virus. That would be absolutely wonderful.
I hope so. And I think that that's probably the key to, as we sort of emerge from this virus and try to figure out who should be the first wave of people to resume some semblance of normal lives. And I think it has to be on that neighborhood level, where you stay in contact with your neighbors and the people who are walking your same block, to say, do you know anybody in the neighborhood that has been sick? How have you all been feeling? To make sure that, of course, people who are at risk, immunosuppressed, or take care of people who are at risk should not be part of the first wave. People who are feeling ill should, of course, stay home. But I think that at some point, as we gradually and slowly reopen, I think that conversations amongst neighbors will be key to going out and exploring our communities a little bit more. And hopefully, we can do that in streets that are a little bit slower, like some of the examples around the country.
Right. So that leads me into, you talked earlier about the speed on some of the roads, that the absence of traffic allows individuals to drive more rapidly. And then also, you look at the history of our road designs. For example, here in downtown Tampa, we put the one-way roads in, so the ingress and egress would be much quicker. And the lesson learned from that, besides the danger of it, the high-speed crashes and the speeding issues, was that individuals weren't paying attention to the small shops that were around them, the businesses and things. And so now we're slowly going back to two-way streets down here. I've lived in Seminole Heights since I was 21, and they probably more than a decade ago now really increased the size of Hillsborough Avenue, and it literally turned into a raceway. And there were no medians, no barriers, and we had so many, what we call in law enforcement, the T-bone crashes, where individuals were pulling out from side roads, and those T-bone crashes, and we had a number of fatalities. And so the Department of Transportation, that's a state road, came in and redesigned it and put the barriers down the middle so individuals weren't able to cross. Also made the lanes a little more narrow so that you didn't want to drive as fast. All of the research shows the more narrow the lanes are, the slower individuals drive, because they have to pay more attention. So in road designs, one of the things that we always look at are the 3 E's. You have education, engineering, and enforcement. And so you try to educate all of your drivers to do the right thing. And then the engineering to try to design roads so that they are as safe as they possibly can be. And then the last element is the enforcement. And I know that there's been a lot of pushback on red light cameras. I am a huge advocate for them, clearly. because I feel they save lives and they stop those T-bone crashes where individuals are making a left-hand turn and are T-boned by another car, and those usually are the ones that lead to the fatalities. So we focus on those 3 E's, and then also Vision Zero is something that I have adopted and am going to work very, very hard towards that goal. And Vision Zero, in essence, is a program that says that we can bring our fatalities, traffic fatalities, down to zero. It's a pretty lofty goal here in our city because we are one of the leaders, unfortunately, in the nation for fatalities. And one of the ways we can reduce that is through complete streets. You know, what you were talking about earlier, uh, making the lanes more narrow, having protected bike lanes, and then having wider sidewalks, lighting up the roadways so that individuals can see at night, and just making it safer and for the motoring public, for pedestrians and cyclists, but encouraging those other modes of transportation, allowing individuals to use their bicycle as a form of transportation, to get out and run and walk for exercise. And then it turns a neighborhood back into a neighborhood. You know, people are driving slowly enough that they observe things. Like on Bayshore, we've lowered the speed limit on Bayshore incrementally, and now you drive down and you see things that you didn't see before because you were driving much faster and it took your attention. So very, very important. What are your thoughts about complete streets and Vision Zero?
You know, you mentioned that unfortunately that our metro area does rank. We're number 2 in pedestrian fatalities per capita in the entire nation, and a lot of that stems from problems in design and usage that certainly predate this administration and many of the prior administrations as well. But I think that the most impactful and immediate change that can happen, of course, is we as drivers have to think with that mentality every time we get behind the wheel. You know, unfortunately, we've had so many tragedies on Bayshore. There are tragedies across our city every day. And
Yes.
I think that my hope is that because we've been out of the car so long, because these streets are underused, as we've been using them as pedestrians, hopefully see them in different lights. I think that's one of the great things about these slow streets or open streets.
Mm-hmm.
Movements that either close completely to vehicular traffic or reduce to a minimum 15 miles an hour or less, and still let emergency vehicles through and narrow traffic spaces, but just let people come out and walk safely and enjoy it. I think when you use a roadway differently on the weekend or differently on off-peak hours, then when you're behind the wheel on that same road, you think a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I think that the most impactful and immediate change, of course, is what we do as individuals. And I'm excited to see and love to hear from you what you envision, and as we open back up from Corona, how we activate our streets and keep them activated for pedestrians.
Yeah.
Because I do think that that the future is very bright emerging from this pandemic.
Yes, and I appreciate your support and your advocacy in those areas because there are a lot of people that are against it, and you know, the complete streets idea, because they just think in terms of getting from point A to point B as quickly as possible. And so, you know, turning streets back into complete streets, narrowing lanes, making roundabouts that not only help our environment because you're not stopping at the stop signs, but they also can avoid those horrific crashes that I have seen way too many times, where you have a four-way stop and everyone assumes the others are going to stop, and then you have the high-speed intersection crashes that have taken a number of lives. So you know, it's the roundabouts really have a huge safety element to them, and then they also have an ancillary environmental plus to them too. And to your point of having people become more aware, since they've been out walking, they've been out cycling, to be more aware of those activities when they get back behind the wheel is critically important. One of the things that I always thought was just sheer genius was the simple sticker that says watch out for motorcyclists on the back of cars, because as drivers, you pull up to a stoplight or you pull up to an intersection, and when you look both ways, especially in the evening, you're looking for two headlights, and quite often you don't see motorcycles or you don't see cyclists. And so that reminder to look out for motorcycles I really thought was genius. And so as a police chief, I would have across the back window of every police car a reminder of the 3-foot distance separation between your car and a bicyclist, that you need to give 3 feet to every bicyclist. And again, that's just a reminder to, for the Vision Zero goal, for individuals to just be aware of people out there on the street riding their bicycles and out as pedestrians, and just slow down. It's certainly not worth taking a life. And I can't tell you how many times I have seen it. And I feel so bad for those individuals that have to witness that. And I heard from some of those who witnessed the uh, most recent death of Hal Flowers out on Bayshore. And that's something that you can never erase. You can never get that out of your mind. And not to mention what his family and any other family citywide that has to go through the loss of a loved one for really no reason at all. So it is critically important. So what do you think? Let's talk about the All for Transportation referendum. Now, given the lawsuit against that All for Transportation referendum that's pending in the Florida Supreme Court, and I am the eternal optimist, but just from the responses from the justices, I know it doesn't sound too good, but I will hold out hope. How do you think the city should prioritize our transportation projects moving forward if that surtax is overturned?
I think that a clear list of priorities are those Vision Zero priority corridors, the most fatal streets for pedestrians and risk of accidents. The another, I think, place is streets that link neighborhoods to recreation centers, like the Green Spine, for example. Corridors that people can use as alternative modes of transportation, where they feel safe biking. And I don't think roads need to be static. They can change use on weekends and off-peak hours. So if we can focus on the roads that, one, are the highest impact, and two, provide some link to draw people out of their homes, out of their cars, without cars, and link to great recreation, the fantastic recreation spaces we have across the city, I think then you provide real alternatives to transportation. You reduce the number of cars, and you do have to prioritize, because there's needs all across the city. Absolutely.
Yes, without a doubt. And that's one of the things that we analyze everything at the police department, and that's how we were successful in reducing crime. But fatalities was always a very perplexing area to address, because it was hard to get your wrap your hands around. One year the fatalities would be motorcyclists without a helmet, the next year it would be DUI drivers, the next year it would be pedestrians, and there in one year we would have 20 some in the city, the next year we would have 50 or 60. So it was just so difficult to analyze and really address. But one of the ways that we went about it was, as I said before, the education, engineering, and enforcement. And we also identified the top 20 most prone accident intersections. Actually, we did the top 40, but the top 20 officers whose geographic area of responsibility encompassed one of those intersections was responsible for doing traffic control at those intersections when they weren't busy with something else, to try to reduce the number of accidents. And that's where we put our red light cameras as well. The red light camera companies were notorious for going into a jurisdiction and identifying intersections where they felt would be the best revenue generators. And when they came to Tampa, we said, this is where they're going to go, because we don't care how much revenue you generate for your company. What we want is to reduce the number of accidents and associated injuries and fatalities. And so they actually have been very successful in reducing those injury accidents and those fatalities in those particular locations. But we're always looking for ways to make our roads safer here in the city of Tampa. And it's all over the city of Tampa. There's not one particular area that stands out. We have the top 20 intersections, and then we have the top 20 stretches of roadway as well that we have the highest number of accidents on. But it is an issue that we have worked on and will continue to work on to ensure that all of our citizens are safe out in our roadways and are able to go out and enjoy our beautiful city. The first thing that I did when I became mayor was to set out my areas of prioritization, and one of those was transportation. And that was the first report that we released, was the transportation report, and it gave us a blueprint for moving forward in making our community safe. One was to provide sidewalks on in the neighborhoods where schools were located, so kids that didn't have bus service had a safe way to get to and from school. And it included complete streets, Vision Zero, and then also a number of mass transit options that we would like to put in place so that we can take more cars off of the road. And so that's something that we look forward to. Whether the all for transportation, clearly, I hope, as you do, that the will of the voters is upheld, and we have some funding for some transportation solutions. I always said we don't lack for good ideas for solutions, we lack for the money to put those in place. But we will put them in place because we have the plans, and we are prepared as a city if there is federal funding for infrastructure programs to kickstart our economy nationwide, that we'll be ready to put those, as they call, shovel-ready plans in place. And also with transportation, there's another option is to go to the private companies and have them provide the mass transit solutions, like Virgin Trains that's doing the high-speed rail from Miami up to Orlando. We're supposed to get Orlando to Tampa, but I'm afraid that is going to be delayed for a while. But we're going to continue to provide safe roads and mobility options to the best of our ability, regardless of what happens with all for transportation. So let's close this out with what do you feel, because you're so deeply involved with the community and clearly very, very busy, not only with your profession as a very successful physician helping individuals in our community, but with 3 young kids too, and you still find time to get involved. So give our listeners some encouragement and some advice on how they can get involved in their community.
Well, in the immediate sense, tomorrow morning City Council virtual workshop is on the issue of speeding across our city, and it includes Bayshore Boulevard, an area that's close to my heart. So I'd encourage everybody to register, attend, and submit your public comments. I think we all have seen the tremendous resource that our streets and our sidewalks and our city parks can be when you feel safe to use them. And I think that we can make these individual choices as drivers. We can choose to not to use car. The Sidewalk Stompers are a great organization that encourage walk to school, and we try to follow those principles as well. And I think that having the very bright team in the Department of Transportation with ideas at the ready. You mentioned engineering as one of those, the pillars of improving traffic. Josh Frank and Brian Cook at Open Office are fond of saying that that roads, so roadways are engineered for cars and they should be designed for people. And I look forward to a long-term future where some of our roadways can serve both needs as vital traffic corridors during peak hours, but in off-peak hours also have vibrant and resilient landscaping that protects pedestrians and capitalizes on our natural resources. So I would say dream about the city that you want to see, dream about the roadways that you would like to see, and let that inspire your passion.
Yes, without a doubt.
As we come out of this conflict and this pandemic, that people will continue to come together.
Yes, without a doubt. And people, would ask, how do you have time for different things? And my position is that there's never enough time for everything, but you make time for things that are important. And so our entire community should make time to get involved. If it's just landscaping an intersection in your neighborhood, or starting a community garden, or mentoring a young child, or getting involved in transportation, whatever it is, whatever your passion is, you can make a difference. And so I always encourage everyone to get involved and volunteer. If you volunteer, you always get more than you give. There's no doubt about that. All right, let's turn to some of our questions. So this is from Devon Garbus. And he asked, is an above ground monorail system possible for commuters? Yes, it certainly is. That's a great idea. And then, can we ever see a commuter line running St. Pete, Tampa, Orlando? When will Florida have high speed rail? Florida has high speed rail. I did work in Miami in my consulting role, and they have the Virgin trains down there. And it has surpassed their expectation for ridership, and everyone absolutely loves it. And so that's the line that's being built. It's extended from Miami, and it's going to go all the way up to Orlando. And hopefully we will be able to get that from Orlando to Tampa. And as I said before, some of these transportation solutions are going to be public-private partnerships, which is great because the private industry can get things done a lot faster than government can, trust me. So without a doubt, we have high-speed rail, and I do see some type. Clearwater is envisioning a monorail from their downtown to the beaches as well, because they only have that one causeway that's backed up on a regular basis. And so monorails have worked in entertainment venues very, very successfully. And I don't see why it couldn't happen here. In airports, they've been very successful, although, I'll bet on a very limited basis. But yes, we definitely are looking at that. And then my good friend, Bob O'Malley. Hey, Bob, what's the status of the Tampa streetcar extension? That we were looking to offer transportation to be able to utilize that funding. But clearly we already have very successful from the Ybor City area to downtown. And then it's still in the works from the downtown Channelside area to go all the way to Florida and Palm. And the expectation there is a fixed rail that we could also have rubber tire on. It's very interesting. The fixed rail, it's what all the businesses want, because you can never move that route, well, you can, but not very easily, not like just a rubber tire route. And so we would be able to use the streetcars, and then for other peak hours, you could put a rubber tire solution on there as well. So that's still in the works. And then we're looking at some form of bus rapid transit from Palm all the way down Florida Avenue and making its way out to USF and then back down that way, so that we would be able to connect neighborhoods from Ybor City all the way to USF. And again, have that mass transit solution or option that would allow our citizens to leave their cars at home. So we're very excited about that. It may take a little bit longer than we had anticipated, but trust me, I'll get it done faster than transportation is used to moving. So that's a little bit of the oil and water there with a law enforcement mindset and a transportation mindset. So we'll see who wins that battle. But Dr. Engelman, I couldn't thank you enough for all that you do for our community. I think that we have some great ideas. I can't wait to hear what comes from the City Council workshop. We have already started on some solutions for Bayshore. One of the answers is to break that up so that individuals won't be able to get up to high speeds along there. And the answer for that is stoplights. There's one had already been planned for Euclid and Bayshore, and then we're going to put one in at Rome and Bayshore. And the temporary lights will be going up in the very near future, and then the permanent ones won't be too far behind that. So we are looking at ways to make Bayshore and every other road in our community as safe as we possibly can. So thank you for your advocacy. I really do appreciate it. And let me close out by reminding everyone we have our dance party at 6 o'clock this evening. So you have to go out there at 6 o'clock and dance like nobody's watching. You can go on any of iHeart's 6 radio stations. They're all going to play the same song. And what is incredibly important today is my good friend Titus O'Neill. Today is his 29th birthday, and he's going to be 29 from this point on. So, and nobody's going to argue with him because he's humongous. But I want to say happy birthday to my good friend Thaddeus Bullard, better known as Titus O'Neill. And also, I want to remind everyone to stay calm, to be kind, and to stay home. So thank you all very, very much for tuning in again. Thank you, Dr. Engelman. I can't wait to see what comes from tomorrow's workshop at City Council. And remember, you guys get out there and volunteer. Advocate for something positive in your community. Thank you all, and God bless. All right. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate it.